Bassline Generator is the new player by Reason Studios. It follows a similar format to Beat Map or Pattern Mutator, and I really like this one. At the center of the player is this map, which combines the on-beat and the off-beat parameters into this sequence down here. We've got this randomize button up here, which automatically generates an entirely new bassline. Or we can adjust the parameters ourselves and move around within the map. We can change the note length of the notes in our bassline, and we can also do this manually. If we add an extra note here and select this tie option, it will join them together. If you do move anything around, manual rhythm and manual pitch engage, you've got to turn these off before you go back to messing with the parameters here. This variator knob changes which notes are adjusted when you move the amount knob here. We can see this really clearly if we switch to this waveform shape here. If I now turn the amount knob, we can see that only the on-beat notes in the second half of the sequence are getting adjusted. If I switch it to this one here, we can see that the notes are getting adjusted in 2 spots in the sequence. Now, this is my one biggest issue with the Bassline Generator. If you look at these waveforms, you'll notice that there aren't any waveforms that allow you to vary the start of the sequence. I feel this is somewhat limiting. I think I understand why they did it. In a bassline, typically you would have variation happening at the end of it, but it would be nice to be able to invert these so we could adjust the variation in the front half of the sequence. I'm realizing as I'm editing this that I really like this particular bass line. Have a listen to this. That's a cool vibe. But if we look at where it's starting from this point here, which is the second half of the variation curve. And it's actually gonna finish here, which is the first half of the variation curve where there's no variation. Now, this is a sick bass line. I would use this, but Bassline Generator doesn't have a way to generate a bass line really like this because the variator curves that we have only allow us to adjust the second half of whatever loop. Now, I could obviously export this to MIDI or audio and chop it up and arrange it how I'd want. I think that's one of the awesome things we can do with a player like this. But it would be nice to either be able to change the start point of this loop. So I could start it from here and finish it here, or have some way to vary the front of the sequence that's created. Note range changes the range that it will generate notes in. And the minorness knob adjusts the intervals it's using to generate the bass line. I really like how it can receive either pitch or velocity data from a MIDI clip. So if I create a MIDI clip here and change the notes, you can see that it's following along with the root note here. Now, those notes don't all sound fantastic, but you know, you can adjust that. If you set it to key mode, it will trigger the start of the sequence every time you push a key, either on your MIDI keyboard or every time a key is pushed in your piano roll. This lets you do some cool stuff. It doesn't really matter what the pitch is, so we can just use the same one. But let's say that I wanted to start my bass line at different points. I've now got the bass line re-triggering each time a MIDI note occurs on the piano roll. Little idea that I made using entirely the Bassline Generator, other than for the drums. Whenever I find a new player or plugin like this, I always try and use it for the thing that it was not intended to be used for, in order to see what kind of interesting stuff I can come up with. So one of the first things I thought of trying with the Bassline Generator was to use it to play anything other than the bass. So what I did for that is stacked 3 of them on top of each other, changed the root notes to different octaves and all within kind of a C major chord type vibe, and then just messed around with the parameters until I got something that sounded like this. Some of those notes could be described as being a little off, maybe, but I kind of like the unusual vibe of it. It's definitely not a sound that I would have gone for if I was writing all those notes out myself. And I think that's where something like the Bassline Generator, or any player for that matter, really shines, is it can spit out ideas for you. They might not always be good ideas, but that's where you get to use your musical ear to be like, oh, I like that. I can do something with that. It's no different to if you discover a new chord on the guitar and you're like, oh, this material is going to generate some more music. Or if you listen to a chord progression you haven't heard before in a song and think, man, I'm going to try to do something with that. I think the point of players is not to write the song for you, it's to give you inspiration. The next thing I did was duplicate that Reason track and put it on a MIDI out device so that I could record the MIDI that's being played. So this is what the Bassline Generator, well, the 3 of them, are actually spitting out. The reason I did that is because I wanted to take some of these notes and use them with some other instruments. So what I have here in this track, let's play that with the drums so you can hear beat 1. So again, some unusual note choices there, but they're kind of cool. I just copied this clip down and then adjusted the notes. So I muted some of them, deleted some of them, and now we get that kind of vibe. I did the same thing with this one here. All of those together with the top line. Next, I have another instance of the Bassline Generator, and this one's generating the actual bass line. Now this is where I want to show you a trick that I think will really help get musical results out of Bassline Generator. I've got my drums here on this complete kit. It's got this groove setting. What that basically allows you to do is select a groove and drag it in as MIDI data. But what I did was took the drum beat, dragged it up, and put it on the bass line. Then what I did was got rid of like the hi-hats and basically everything that I didn't want to be triggering a bass line. Highlighted all of those and smoothed them out. Then I was left with that. Now, what this means is that if I select my Bassline Generator now and put it on sequencer and key, it will only play the bass line when it's been triggered by the sequence. So you'll see here, if I play it from here, it doesn't play anything where there are these muted notes. There's nothing on beat 1 here anyway, so you can see it doesn't start till the third one here because these notes are muted. If I turn these on, if I turn them off, and because it's triggering it at the exact same time as my kicks and snares are happening from my drum beat, this is what you get. Basically, you're left with a bass line that perfectly matches up with your kick and your snare or whatever other hits you want on the drum beat. I think that's a super cool trick because often when you're writing a piece of music, you want the bass line lining up with the kick drum. And if you're generating all of these random bass lines, they might not fit your drums. So a really great way of overcoming that is to simply take your drum beat, your kick and your snare, put it on the MIDI track for the Bassline Generator, and just use it as a trigger. So that's Reason Studio's new player. I really like this one. I think it's really well thought out. There are a few limitations that I would like to see changed, like not really being able to vary what's happening at the start of your sequence. But overall, I think this player is awesome. And it's one I can see myself using a lot beyond simply generating bass lines. I love the idea of stacking multiple ones on top of each other to come up with melodic parts. And I love the idea of using a drum beat to trigger when the bass line plays. The point of these players is to not write the song for you. It's to inspire you to create something you couldn't have come up with otherwise. And I think Bassline Generator does that really well. That's the video, guys. Thanks for checking it out. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, give this video a like and let me know in the comments, what do you think of Bassline Generator? Have you tried it yet? Are you gonna try it? Let me know in the comments and I'll catch you next time.